Hey guys, Alicia here. We are going to be talking about the top 10 tips I have for taking your running onto the trails today. I am excited to help you adapt more quickly than I did when you take your running on to the dirt for the first time ever. And if you want to learn more, we are releasing new videos every week. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell right off the hop. Okay, so my plan is to kind of start from the bottom and then move up to the more vital or important tips as we go along. But you are welcome to disagree with me. And if you do, I would love for you to just pop a comment and let me know what you think the top tips are. The first thing that I learned and that I think others could totally benefit from is when I started, I didn't realize how much bigger days out on the trails were than days, running around the city or the town that you live in. And so I wouldn't prepare enough the day before, and especially I wouldn't prepare enough in terms of getting a little bit of fuel in the day before so that I felt better and stronger. A caveat to this, and this comes from hard-won experience. Before my first marathon, and this was a road marathon, I had learned about carb loading like the week before in school. I was a first-year kinesiology student. My teacher had mentioned carb loading, so I Googled it. I picked a food that I thought had a lot of carbs in it. Waffles, which has a lot of carbs, also has a lot of fat in it. And I looked up how long before your run you should carb load, which somehow, when I did the math, meant that at 3 in the morning, I had to wake up and make like 15 waffles with my boyfriend at the time, husband now, and down all those waffles. And then I thought I was carb loaded and ready to go. I'm sure you can imagine those waffles came right back up. I puked like 10 minutes before I started my first marathon. So that wasn't the wisest strategy. So do not carb load like that. The best way to fuel the day before a big day out on the trails is just to increase the volume of your carbohydrate-rich fuels by half a serving each that day before, and then see how you feel and go from there. I actually work with someone who looks at my nutrition now and who tells me to adjust certain things and helps me try out, experiment a little bit. And so that's fun once you get used to it. But to start with, if this is your first time going from, a road race to a trail race, just to make sure that you're fueling enough the night before. The second thing is make sure you're fueling enough when you're out there. And now this mainly applies if your run is more than an hour to 90 minutes. You're gonna want some things out on the trail that you can take in, whether that's some like a Gatorade-like fluid or snacks along the way. I tend to find that the store-bought snacks are, how do I say this? I'm cheap. So I find that the store-bought snacks, although some of them are specially formulated for maximum trail performance, you tend to be paying a lot, and if you're going out running a lot, that can add up. So I like to make some things at home. I've recently started making my own like gummies, and I'm able to control the amount of carbohydrates and the other added micronutrients that I have in there, and that's kind of fun. I've also made fruit leather that I can take out on the trail, jerky that I can take out on the trail, and those things tend to sit well with my stomach. Whatever you decide to take out there though, make sure you test on a shorter run, because what you don't want is to be like 10K into a 20K trail run and realizing that your digestive system is not happy with you. That's not something you want. You don't want a Alicia waffle situation at a first marathon. Let's avoid that. The next thing, when you're taking your runs onto the trails, is to take, and maybe this is the number one, but we're gonna have it here anyways, is to take safety seriously. So I don't know about the trails close to you, but the ones around here, it's harder to get help if something was to go wrong on those trails. For instance, we don't have cell service in a lot of the areas where I like to run. And so I had to get a communication device that worked with satellite. I also bring a first aid kit that is kind of custom made, meaning I made it myself, for the most common injuries that you might have when you're out trail running. So as you can imagine, uneven trails, you're more likely to roll an ankle in that kind of situation. And so make sure you have what you need to deal with that. And make sure you also have a plan. So if something goes wrong at this many kilometers into the trail, this is our exit strategy. And beyond that, this is super important, make sure someone knows where you're going as specifically as possible, when you plan to be back, and leave that with somebody who really cares if you come back so that you can get help right away if something does happen to go wrong. So I'll put a link in the description. I have a little easy to fill out printout that you can fill out for your run. What I do is I have it in a clear plastic sheet protector, have a little erasable marker. I quickly jot down where I'm going, how long it is, when I plan to be back, etc., etc. And then I send a screen or a picture of that to my husband so that he always knows where I am if I was to not come back. You should also make sure that you understand how to get help in the area that you're in. So in Canada, okay, so close to Pincher Creek, we've got national park, we've got a provincial park, we've got crown land, we have town land, and MD roads. So in every single one of those situations, there's a different person you should be contacting if you need help. So you need to take different precautions depending on where you're going. So just make sure you look into that so that you know what to do if something goes wrong. That's super important. Okay, I've been rambling for 8 minutes and we're only a few in, so I'm gonna get moving on these guys. If you're planning on going trail running, you gotta put in a little bit of extra core work and a little bit extra glute work and a little bit extra ankle work and balance work as preparation as your homework before you get to go out on the trails. A strong core and strong glutes are going to give you, I like to think of it as your base. So anything could be happening under your feet. You could be on crazy rocky terrain, lots of switchbacks, whatever it is. But if you have a strong core and strong glutes, you have a stable base and your feet can move any way they need to in order to get you over that terrain. That leads to the ankle strength. So we are more likely to roll an ankle when we're out on the trails. A lot of different forces happening there. And you're taking a lot of steps. So you're out for a 5K and you're gonna be taking 15,000 steps. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. Let me put the exact numbers on the screen for you once I get them. Once I'm not a little brain foggy from my run today. So after you've taken that many steps, every one of those is technically an opportunity for a sprained ankle. And so a little bit of work goes a long way in getting you ready for trails. The next thing is, and this is really important, not expecting your road paces to transfer to the trails. You can be really hard on yourself at the beginning if you think that 20-minute 5K that you can do on the road is going to translate into a 20-minute 5K on trails. Because we're on a softer surface, less of the power that we push into the ground translates into propelling us forward. So right off the hop, you're not going to have the same paces. Add in to that you are most likely going to be on more aggressive inclines and declines, and that there'll be some more lateral movement involved, more turning, that kind of thing, and right away it makes sense. Even though it makes sense though, I remember being so hard on myself when I couldn't keep my trail paces up to what I expected them to be based on what the road was. So remember that when you go out there, and also realize that you're not going to be able to pace the same way you can on the road. So on the road, you can hold for 30 kilometers, and you know that if you hit every single one right on the button, you pace that way, that you're going to come out with a certain result. Case in point, today when I was out running, I had kilometers that were close to 20 minutes a kilometer because I was going uphill and it was very steep and I was navigating snow and rock and all that jazz. And then I had kilometers that were you know, way closer to my road speeds. I had kilometers that were like, you know, just under 5 minutes a kilometer. And that's because I had a gentle downward area on a relatively easy trail. So your paces are going to be all over the place. Don't be hard on yourself. Do not expect the same thing, the same paces on the trails that you have on the road. Okay, I've said that enough. That's an important one. Next one is gear. So anyone who knows me knows that I am pretty cheap. I think that, well, I like to make do with what I have. And that kind of translates into what I say is important when you're getting gear to go running with. So there is a little difference in that I do think a couple pieces of gear are important. I always recommend a heart rate monitor and a watch. Doesn't have to be a fancy watch, doesn't have to be a fancy heart rate monitor, but it's going to be easier for you to gauge intensity and understand how hard your run actually was, because you can't use pace to do that if you have those pieces. Aside from that, safety gear is going to be important. So a first aid kit that you know how to use. So a first aid kit that maybe you've put together after you take a basic wilderness first aid course, because you are going to be farther from help. And so knowing how to do certain things is going to be super important. And then having stuff in your first aid kit that you actually know how to use, not just one that you bought from the pharmacy and then you're just going to open it for the first time if something happens wrong out on the trail. Instead, I guess this isn't gear, but get the skills that you need to be out on those trails and the gear that is associated with that. The next thing is if you're going to be out of service, knowing that you have an inReach. Well, I use an inReach, but any kind of personal locator beacon, a PLB, or if you want something fancier, a satellite device so that you can actually message when you're out on the trails. So those pieces of gear are important. However, when you first start, likely, and I guess this is the next tip, go with a friend or someone from the community, someone from the area who has that experience, who maybe has that gear as well, so that you don't have to invest hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get started. That leads into the next tip, which is finding someone to help you take your first steps out on the trails. So this could just be a friend. There's a lot of communities on the internet in different places. Like for Pincher Creek, I can think of quite a few that go out on trails and can help each other. And usually people who have been out trail running and have gotten a lot of value from it, they are right eager to take other people out as well. So find someone who wants to go out, learn from them. Don't pretend that you have more experience than you do. Just say, hey, I'm looking to get into it. I don't know much about it, but I'm excited and I'll follow where you take me. And then be active in that process. I love it when people ask questions about where we're going and what we're doing and why we made the decision we did. That's only going to help you get better at it for yourself. Next one. Now that I've talked too much about that part, I can't believe how calm it is. You can see the mountains in the lake. Wild. Anyways, while it's still calm, build up your distances with caution the same way you do on roads. So maybe your first trail run shouldn't be a 30K with 1,500 meters of elevation gain. Start slow and look for flatter trails when you start. So for me, I ran, I hiked, and then I started trail running. So when I was hiking, I was looking for, a lot of reward for not a lot of distance. When I was running, I was looking for, concrete tracks, someplace to go. When I trail run, I thoroughly enjoy flatter trails because you can have fun with them. You can go a little bit quicker and you can cover way more distance than you are when you're hiking, because you're also packing a little lighter and you're focused on moving pretty quick. So look for trails that have a little bit less elevation, particularly at the beginning. And then don't forget that elevation is going to aggressively affect your pace on the way up and on the way down. A good rule of thumb is to allow for 2/3 of the amount of time that it took to go up the trail to come back down the trail. That can vary. Today was a good day for me. It was like half, it took me a little bit under half as much time to come down as it did to go up, but that varies depending on the trail you're on. If you allow for 2/3 of that amount of time, then you're good to go. And so then this is my last one. Whether you're chosen a trail that's a loop or an out and back, make sure that you and your group have talked about your turnaround time and that you stay consistent with it. It can be so tempting if you pick a turnaround time and you're really close to, whatever your destination was, to push it a little bit and try and get to that lake or that mountaintop or whatever it is. But if something was to happen, having a time buffer is really important to be able to get people out in daylight while it's still warm, etc., etc. So pick a turnaround time, agree on it with your whole group, and stick to it. That's going to help you be safe out there for sure. I feel like I could talk forever about this, but I think that was a good little starting pack of tips when you get out on the trails. Maybe the most important thing, and the thing I'll leave you with, is it is a lot of fun to take your running off of concrete. It takes the pressure and focus off of hitting certain time limits and scales, and instead it helps you get that benefit of being outside and of being able to run through places like this instead of just focusing on yourself. And I think that that is a massive benefit. It's definitely made running a lot more fun for me. So get out there, be safe, but enjoy it along the way. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. If you have any questions, I would love it if you drop them in the comments or shoot me a message. And make sure you check out the descriptions for those resources that I mentioned. All right, have a wilder one. We'll see you guys later.